Hi all, have you ever started a job that just went wrong over and over? One of those jobs you expected to knock out in a day and it ends up taking 3. This is the tale of my Grafton drill press, and it all started when instead of having the drill running from 20 yards of wire armoured cable coiled up behind it, I finished the workshop wiring and fitted a pair of dedicated sockets behind it, and it ran the wrong way. No problem, reverse any 2 phases in the plug sorts that out. So I swapped red phase and white phase, but instead of running the right way, it ran slowly and growled. Well, it is obviously now on 2 phases only, so what have I done wrong? Back into the plug to find that the phases were red, green and blue, and earth ground was on the white. Good job I was in my safety boots. So okay, I'm going to have to sort the wiring, but the flexible conduit needs remaking at both ends, and the terminal box on the motor is loose, so it needs attention anyway. I will do it now. So we make the green the earth again, put white back to phase, earth through the starter box to the motor, and then notice that the motor tails are crumbly and there is loose insulation in the bottom of the connection box. But hey, no problem, just solder new tails into the motor. So after a bit of a struggle getting the motor stripped, because it was probably the first time it had been stripped since the factory, I rip out the old tails, solder some new ones in, tie them up to the windings, and a bit of shrink tube makes it neat. I then noticed that the bearings appear to have been packed with some black tar, so I decide that while I'm in there I'll wash them out, repack them, although to be honest, because the drill had quite a loud rattle, but more of that later, I do not remember any excessive bearing noise. But it has got to be better, right? So we'll do it. So pull off the end cap, clean up the shafts, pull off the bearings, very tight but we get there. Wash them out, and there is a catch in the drive end bearing, but the dead end one, a double roll self-aligning expensive type, appears to be fine. It's only a minor catch in the drive end, so I decide that as there was no noise that I can remember, I'll just repack them and try it out. I do this, and boy is it noisy. You can hear the catch in the upper bearing, and when you press stop and the rotor settles, a loud whine comes from the lower one too. Strip the motor again and off to the bearing shop. They have the upper bearing but not the lower one, so I get that one and decide I will strip the lower bearing again and give it the clean of its life, although I have examined it and my aging eyes can see nothing wrong with it. Fit the new bearing, wash and repack the lower one again, rebuild the motor and refit it, and it now runs the correct direction. But I hear a second noise which immediately realise is one of the motor tails catching on the rotor fan. My hand shoots to the stop button, but too late. There is a pop from the motor, the breaker pops out, and the lower bearing whines like an air raid warning. So I take off the motor again, strip it, and realise that if you fit the end caps and turn it clockwise to line up the punch marks, the wires move out of harm's way. All is well. But if you turn anti-clockwise, they move towards the rotor fan just enough to catch. No problem, the damage is very minor, a bit of shrink tube fixes it, so I rebuild it again, refit, and it's back on 2 phases. Switch off, look in the starter, and it has taken out the overload coil on blue phase. So I rewind the coil with some nichrome wire, off goes the motor, and now both bearings are noisy again. After a moment's thought, I realise that the fault current from the rotor will have travelled through the bearings, but hey, it's Friday, 4 o'clock, and I've had enough for the week, so I quit while I'm behind, go home and order a pair of new bearings from the net. Fit the new bearings when they arrive, and in the meantime I've repacked all the machine bearings, repainted and sorted out the rattle on the spindle pulley with a roll of brass shim stock. I make and fit a belt guard, it never had one, and the rubber trim is the final touch that stops it rattling. The whole machine is now whisper quiet, and I am really glad about it. Here is a slideshow. I hope you enjoy it more than I enjoyed doing it. Bye. And this is how quiet it is now.